Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series, Interviews with Aurovilians. Today we are honored to have Loretta with us. Namaste, Loretta.
Namaste, Loretta.
The first question I always ask people is, how did you first hear of Mother and Sri Aurobindo?
Well, I had no particular interest in yoga, no interest in religion, but in the 1960s, yogis and teachers started coming to America, and so I came to India. And as soon as my foot touched the earth of India, I forgot about my whole American life. So I came to India to just look at yogic things. And as soon as I came and I heard about the words personal progress, I became on fire for personal progress. My family was not religious. I never went to a church, never, or a temple, or any kind of thing. But personal progress was very important. And so I asked people, I said, well, where do you go for personal progress? And they said, well, there are these yogis in the Himalayas, you go there. So I went to the Himalayas, and I turned into an Indian.
Turned into?
An Indian lady.
Okay.
I put on the white sari of a spiritual seeker, and I went from ashram to ashram, and I learned about Indian culture, and I spoke Hindi. No culture shock at all. After 3 years in which I forgot everything that I was doing in America, I thought, maybe I better go back. So I asked my family to send me a plane ticket, and I thought I had better see something of India. India itself. Because
before you go back?
Before I go back, because I had done none of those things. I went straight to the Himalaya. I went straight to find this personal progress, whatever this was. I decided I would travel to Bombay. In those days it was Bombay. And I would go to the southernmost tip of India, back to Bombay, and fly out. On the way, I had an experience of immortality in the physical body. And I got really excited. I thought, wow, never thought of this before. And I went around telling everyone, strangers, perfect strangers, hey, listen, did you know you don't have to die, you don't have to fall apart? And somebody said to me, there is a lady called the mother of the Sri Aurobindo ashram in
You were now in the southern point of India? At this point, you were in Bombay.
I know, I had gone through Bombay. Actually, I was in Kanangad.
Okay.
I was in the ashram of a very well-known saint called Ram Das.
Oh, yes.
And he had a very beautiful partner named Krishnabai that she was really nice. And because I spoke Hindi, we became friends. It was really nice. But they had a library. So I went to their library, and they had Mother's book, Words of Long Ago. And by the time I had been in India 3 years, trying to do my progress through these Indian methods, I had a lot of unanswered questions. And Mother's book, she answered all my questions. And I thought, well, I have to see Mother. I have to see this lady. Now,
what year was this now, Loretta?
It was in the very end of 1971 or the beginning of 1972. Mind you, I had, by this time, had many darshans of Indian holy people. I'd been in many ashrams. I understood much about the Indian way of life, and I just floated along. So I wrote Mother a postcard. And I told her all about myself in little tiny, and I wrote, 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 and I wrote. And I sent Mother my postcard, and I followed my postcard. And on the way, I stopped at Goa, where there were hippies, because I hadn't seen any Americans. I'd been in the jungles. And I caught hepatitis. It was in the air. So by the time I came to Kanyakumari, I was completely sick. I couldn't move. I thought I was going to die, actually. When you have hepatitis, everything just stops.
I've been there.
Okay. So I was lying on the bed, And a little American girl came through who was on her way to Pondi. And I could not have gotten to the train by myself, but I asked her, would she take me? So I was raging delirious on the train. It was 2 days out of my life. And I remember getting off in front of the ashram gate from a rickshaw, one of these rickshaws that are pulled by coolies. And in those days, the ashram reception was divided into 2 parts. I don't know if you remember that. There was a partition. And Kamal Kanto, do you remember Kamal Kanto, the poet? He was on duty. So I didn't really pay much attention, and I went down and I lay on the floor because I couldn't stand up. Can you imagine? This was the centenary year. This was February.
Yeah. Oh, February.
February 22nd of 1972. The ashram was celebrating Sri Aurobindo's centenary, and tens of thousands of people were there for this. And I lay down on the floor. And I could hear this, Christy, her name was, I could hear her telling this man that we wanted a room and that I was sick. And I could hear his voice saying, I'm very sorry, but we have no rooms. As you can see, we're overcrowded. So she brought him around the partition to see me, and somehow, sick as I was, I stood up very politely and I said, I'm so sorry, sir, we have been traveling. Can you give us a room? And he gave us a room. He put us in the Auroville guest house.
In Auroville guest house?
Do you remember the Auroville guest house? Were you ever there?
In the center? Where was it? In Aspiration?
No. It was in Pondicherry. It was on, I think, the Rue Romain Rolland, I think, just after the sea, right down by the beach guest house.
Yes.
That was an old Tamil house, and the walls of the rooms were this thick,
yes,
and the rooms were this big. We had a room without a window next to the toilet, just big enough for 2 little beds. And I lay on my bed, doing nothing. And Christy used to bring me curds and fruit. One day I took a rickshaw to the ashram, and I went into the samadhi and I leaned against the marble of the samadhi. And something came from deep inside the samadhi into my chest, and I was healed of the hepatitis. And I knew nothing about Sri Aurobindo, I knew nothing about Mother, but I knew that Sri Aurobindo had healed me of my hepatitis. And so, meanwhile, I had forgotten about my postcard. With the traveling and being ill, I forgot my experience, I forgot why I wanted to see Mother, and I was on my way back to America. So I waited for the 29th of February because that was a darshan. And then came the news Mother was not going to give a darshan. She wasn't well. So in the meantime, again, I took a bus to Auroville. I went to the center, not to see Auroville, but because I was going back to America to see some Americans after living in the jungles, basically as a single foreigner living in the jungles by myself with the different ashrams. And I got off the bus, and the Matrimandir was a big hole in the ground. And nobody really wanted to talk to me. They were busy with their work. So I came back. And on the 29th, I sat in meditation in the ashram, in the playground, and a great flame appeared above my head. And I thought, now what shall I do with this flame? And I knew, of course, that you go to the feet of the Guru in an ashram. So I thought, I will place the Mother in the flame above my head. I will be at her feet. And the flame disappeared into my body. And suddenly, I was really conscious. Just conscious of where I was. I could feel myself conscious, and I thought, oh, I had better see this lady, this Mother of this ashram. So I said, how do you see Mother? They said, go to see Madhav Pandit, because Madhav was Mother's secretary. He was giving the passes. I went to Madhav Pandit. I had been in the ashram area for a week. I had been in samadhi maybe twice. I sat down in the chair, next to his desk. He used to sit, he would lean, and he would talk. I didn't tell him my name. I didn't tell him anything about myself. I said, except that I'm visiting the ashram and I would like to see the Mother. He says, we have your postcard. Now, how he knew who I was, I have absolutely no idea. And he said, because we got your postcard, even though we're really busy, you can have Mother's darshan. But you have to wait a little while. As you see, we're very crowded. And I said, God help me, I said, I'm sorry, I have no time. I'm on my way back to America. Thank you very much. I got up, I walked out. The next day I came to Samadhi. I was walking through Samadhi, and some gentleman who I never saw before, and how he knew who I was, I don't know, came up. He said, Madhav Pandit has got your pass for darshan the day after tomorrow. Please go and see him. So I got my pass. And then I made a painting of my experience to give to Mother. And I started imagining myself seeing Mother. And when I had been in Kanangat with Krishnabai, I sat at her feet. She sat next to me and we talked. So I had a vision of myself sitting at the feet of a beautiful, gracious lady with long, flowing dark hair and a beautiful white gown, and just telling her everything about myself, everything that was in my heart. So I went on the morning of the darshan, and I carried my painting, and I went up the stairs and I followed the queue. And as you know, we sit on the outside Mother's terrace, and they call us in one by one when there's a group coming for darshan, come in the line. They called my name, and I went in, and I walked in the door, and there was Mother sitting in profile in front of me. And Mother did not look at all like my dream, my vision of her. She was very small and obviously very old. I really knew nothing about her. And leaning very far forward. And it was like I was hit by an avalanche. And I realize now it was the consciousness in the room that just popped like this. And I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't understand anything. And so what I did is I watched the people in the line in front of me. And I saw that each one, the line went around the room and then came in front of Mother's chair. And I saw that each person kneeled down in front of Mother and looked up into Mother's eyes. And they only wanted to keep on looking in Mother's eyes. So I held on to that. I kept telling myself, okay, this is what you do. So I came in front of Mother and I kneeled down and I looked up into Mother's face. And Mother was the youngest person I had ever seen. I saw no signs of age at all. She was very fresh, and her skin was like a baby's skin. It was very white and very beautiful, and her eyes were very blue, very strong blue. And around Mother, there was something that I can only say was consciousness, more consciousness. And if you ask me then, and you ask me today, what do you mean? I can only say pure consciousness. So I'm looking at Mother. She was so beautiful, and I had my painting, and she asked me how she knew I spoke English. Of course she knew. She said, "This for me?" And I said, "Yes." Gave it to her. And then the attendants that are always behind Mother took it away. And I'm looking at Mother, and then I hear people saying to me, "Put your head on Mother's lap, put your head on Mother's lap." And I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to look. Finally, I put my head on Mother's lap, and Mother blessed me. She touched me. And then I still remember my thoughts. I said to myself, I'm home. This is it. I am never getting up. I'm never going to move again. I mean, how is this possible? I am never, ever going to move again. And I stayed there. Nobody touched me. Nobody said a single word.
Nobody
said a single word. Some force pulled me back up onto my feet. I remember that. And then I don't remember anything except that force took me out of the room, down the top flight of stairs and through Mother's salon, and I became conscious halfway down the steps to the meditation hall. And then I walked out through the samadhi, and I felt free, like a flying bird. And the thought in my mind was that, okay, now I'm free to go back to America. That was my thought. So I knew that Mother had taken away the glue that held together my personality. I could sense that. This freedom, something had been lifted, how I was stuck together. The next day, Narad, I found myself living in the Matramandra workers' camp with a room. And the only thing I remember, I have a few minutes of remembering putting in a suitcase. Why I was doing this, I have no thoughts. I stepped up onto the Auroville bus. I remember getting down at the center, and there was Johnny Walker. Remember John Walker?
Very well.
Dear, wonderful Johnny Walker. I'd never seen him before. He'd never seen me before. He says, I'm moving out of my room. I'm going to go live in this capsule. There was like a small keep capsule outside, do you remember? You can have my room. And I moved into the workers' camp. I didn't know anybody. I don't think I ever talked to Johnny Walker right away after that again. I just showed up in the workers' camp. And again, I forgot all about going back to America. This was the second time.
You had a ticket already?
I had a ticket. This was the second ticket that I wasted. The second ticket. Mind you, when I left America, I was an artist. I had a bachelor's degree in sculpture from UCLA. I was working on the very end of a Master of Fine Arts in ceramics so that I could teach at the college level, and I had only to do my final master's project. My whole life was set in America. It was wiped out, gone. So I walked around the camp here and there, and the kitchen wasn't in very good shape. I had served different Indian masters in the Himalaya in the kitchens, cutting vegetables, and you learn to serve the guru their food in the traditional way. And I had one single thought. I thought, well, I know something at least about, I couldn't cook, I wasn't a cook, but I know something about Indian cooking in the sense of how it's done. Maybe I ought to fix this kitchen, one thought. So then I thought, I think I'd like to stay. How do I do that? They said, well, you write a letter to Mother. I wrote to Mother and I asked permission, could I stay? Mother sent back a letter in which she said, you can be an Aurovilian, but first you have to fix the kitchen at the Matramandra workers' camp.
We all remember that worker camp very well. I remember you there in the kitchen.
Yes, I remember you in the corner room where you stayed.
With Mary Helen.
With Mary Helen, of course.
Yes.
I was safe to say that I was an improvement, but I wasn't. Do you remember the food we got? Our food came from Society, and Prabha from Society would send it out on the bus. Twice a week I got some rice, some dal, ashram bread, and some dead vegetables. and we had milk from the nursery, and we ate ragi. We had ragi porridge every day, and fortunately for everyone who ate in the kitchen, we did have a cook. Do you remember? Remember we had a Tamil cook. He came in every morning and he cooked breakfast and lunch, and then we all took turns cooking dinner in teams, and I knew how to make sprouts, so that was a big improvement. And we had an oven. The kind of oven was a big square metal box that you put on the gas burner. And I used to bake bread. We had these big aluminum katoris, remember? We ate out of them. I'm sure it was pure poison to bake in these, but I did. I'd take all the mashed up bananas and I'd make bread and stuff like that. And on the Matramandra concretings, people would come for these all-night concretings. And I used to run the vibrator when they poured the concrete. I used to love that. And at some point, I'd come running back to the camp, and I'd get these big kettles full of tea, and I'd have these banana breads, and I'd take a wheelbarrow, and I'd bring the wheelbarrow full of tea and bread out to the camp for snacks around, I don't know, 2 in the morning or something like that. And when I came back, I found that people remembered that. Yeah, it was very nice. So after I'd been there about 4 months, I wanted to work on the Matra Mandir, because I thought everyone else was having fun on the Matra Mandir and I wasn't having fun in the kitchen, and it was too hard, and I'd never done it, and I wanted to be an artist. And so I wrote to Mother, and I asked her, and I said, and she wrote back, and she said, no. She said, I told her when I was a child, to just digress slightly, I went through an Egyptian period. Just something opened in my consciousness, and I read everything about Egypt, and I was drawing hieroglyphs and having visions of Egypt. And so after coming, I knew that Mother had this history in Egypt, and I decided I must have been with Mother in Egypt. I have no idea if that's true, but I decided that. So I wrote to Mother, and I told her that, and I remember decorating your temple, and I'd like to decorate your temple again. Can I work on the Matra Mandir? And Mother wrote back, now is not the time to go into the past. Now is not the time to go into the past. Now is the time to go into the future. Your work is very satisfactory. I send you my love and my blessings. She didn't say no, but she didn't say yes. And I knew that the Guru always gave the disciple work for their progress. So I stayed in the kitchen. And I would like to tell you something, how I accepted Mother as my Guru. Because when I first came to the camp, on the second night that I was there, sleeping in my little bed in the room, I woke up at 2 in the morning. And I became aware of the fact that I was talking with someone. And leaning over me on the bed was a beautiful woman in a long white gown with beautiful long flowing hair, exactly as I had seen Mother in all my inner visions. And I knew it was Mother. And she was talking to me, and she was saying, is everything all right? Is your room okay? Do you need anything else? Are you happy? And I knew that Mother loved me more than anyone ever loved me in my life. And there was more beauty and more love than anything I had ever seen. And at that time, I accepted Mother as my Guru. And from that time, I think it was a divine grace, actually, that I was in India before I came, because I sort of had a ready-made template for what a Guru was and what a relationship to a Guru was. So that was automatic with me. And I sort of understood everything about Mother without the intellectual knowledge. And so from that time, my whole life was just a long conversation with Mother. From that second day, the usual conversation when you're just starting, it was like, Mother, I don't like this. Mother, this person is mean to me. Take them away. Mother, fix this, fix that. I mean, but it was just endlessly with Mother and Mother and Mother all the time. And all I wanted to do was see Mother. But you couldn't see Mother because she was busy in her room, and she had retired to her room. She did say, and I found this out actually 35 years later when I was doing research, that because she didn't have time to see people during the day, that she went out to see people at night in her subtle body. So I learned that truth that I had already experienced many, many years later. But I kind of made a scheme. I thought, I am going to see Mother between every public darshan, if I'm ready in my sadhana. Because somehow no one had to tell me about sadhana at all. That was just there. And And that's what I did. In between each public darshan, I wrote and I asked Mother, do you think I'm ready? Can I come and see you? And she said yes every single time. She was really good to me. She was really, really, really good to me. And so I would prepare for days to go to her room, and it was just heaven, just to climb up the stairs and to sit on the terrace.
And you saw her many times?
Well, no, I came in the beginning of 72, and Mother left in November of 73. So I saw her up until February of 73, that's 4 darshans, when she retired completely. And they said she was too ill to see people. I saw her 4 times. Once I went to see her, and she looked like a beautiful pink rosebud, a tiny pink rosebud, and she was so beautiful, and she was so soft, and all of that tenderness and all of that softness just stayed with me for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I don't know what Mother was doing inside me, but I did understand that she was always working inside me. And so I would just go to be open and let that happen. Once I went and she gave me a mantra. Once I went.
You saw her? I mean, you actually went physically?
Yes. I saw her 4 times. So
4 times?
4 times. So I saw her the first time.
What about your birthday?
I saw her on my birthday. That's the last time I saw her.
Okay.
That's the last time I saw her. So I went the first time when I had to be taken out of the room. I went to see her when she was like a beautiful pink rosebud. I went to see her when she gave me a mantra. And once I had a really extraordinary experience. I was sitting outside on the terrace waiting to go in. And I just kind of looked to my left. And right there was pouring down in front of me, without any sound, with a kind of golden brown color, all the creation. Trees and houses and mountains and rivers and people and worlds, just pouring. And I knew that this was Mother's consciousness, a small part of Mother's consciousness.
Wonderful. Namaste.